Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally and today we are looking at the second half of the JW broadcasting for March. But before we get started, I need to give you guys an update. And yeah, I am just going to come out and say it. I made a massive mistake. I was wrong in something. I listened to people in the YouTube comments that were saying, it's very distracting when you have your cat always jumping around you and hopping around. Why don't you just get to the point? And I'm going to take this L. I should have listened to you, the people of the JW Thoughts family, not those random morons that were commenting that they were distracted by ZZ. So I am going to make a concerned effort to make sure that ZZ is in more videos, and hopefully if I keep saying ZZ over and over again, like ZZ, come here, maybe he'll show up. And if not, there will be a funny edit right now. Yes, my co-host is back, and I'll try and make sure that he makes regular appearances, because a lot of times he was just sort of sleeping before, and I just gave him treats and stuff and gave him some incentive to be part of the broadcast, and I haven't been doing that as much recently. So we are giving ZZ more treats again. He will be a regular feature, and we're not going to listen to the random YouTube commenter that says, I would really like your broadcast and your performance and your criticisms much more if I didn't have to stare at a cat's asshole the whole time. No. We're not listening to those people. And we know that everyone likes seeing ZZ's curvy, goofy little tail fly across my face as I take down the Watchtower. Oh, I really shouldn't have instituted the bad openings. Mario sound. Now I'll have to add that in post. Okay, this is a scuffed intro. March, JW Broadcasting. Don't forget to drop a like on the video if you like this content. Subscribe to the channel for future things like this. And let's do this.
When you hear the word realistic, what comes to your mind?
And by the way, they're real and they're spectacular.
Realistic conveys the idea of something that is practical, rational, reasonable, and sensible. Having expectations that are realistic is essential to joy and success in Jehovah's service. In contrast, unrealistic expectations cause discouragement.
Now, for anyone thinking that I might have been doing some goofy editing here, no. When you put this into an editing software and you look at the waveform of this guy's speech, it is absolutely brutal. It is a few little batches of words, followed by another few batches of words that eventually make a point. It is ridiculous. His entire speech pattern is so obvious whenever you actually see it in the waveform. So I was just trying to cut out other things in between. But what is he actually talking about? And we need to have realistic expectations. Bro, you are looking forward to being part of 1% of humanity that survives a global cataclysm that kills billions and billions and billions of people. And you are going to rebuild the earth with your friends and pals so you can have pet lions and tigers and pandas and anacondas that eat grass. This man literally thinks that there's going to be a time in history where an anaconda is out there eating a mango. What is he? And he's talking about having realistic expectations. Jehovah's Witnesses are not even remotely qualified to talk about giving people realistic expectations. Their entire organization has a history of setting dates or generations or time frames for when the end of all humanity is going to come about. And they're going to educate you about realistic expectations. I won't stand for it. I don't really want to listen to it. I'm thinking we'll probably just skip over this entire talk, but at least we got the gist of what he was going after here. Realistic expectations, no, get it out of here. Ain't nobody got time for that. But There's one thing that I think as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses we can derive from some of this based off of the little skit that they had before with the lady that was struggling with wanting to go to SKE and how that was affecting her life and anxiety. And just hearing him talk about this throughout this, I was like, it's really important to understand that as a Jehovah's Witness, there was almost no concept of a personal best, of giving your best effort towards something and accomplishing the maximum that you personally are able to achieve in any particular endeavor. And that brings joy and satisfaction in your life. When you say, I want to get as good as I can at X, I want to be as best as I can at Y, and you do that, it is a wonderful experience, and you train your brain really to be more productive, to be more driven, to focus on things that you aren't doing correctly. That way it helps you to improve. It gives you a realistic expectations of your flaws and an understanding of those, so that way you can make improvements. And all of the language we heard as Jehovah's Witnesses, where it was this, set goals, you can achieve them, but they're goals that are set for you. Or even how they're talking now. We need to be realistic in our expectations. And then he goes on and talks about this Watchtower from the 1980s that basically said, if you pursue a sports career, you'll end up addicted to drugs and women. It was very confusing, so I don't even know why he's quoting it. But an important point is, you can accomplish and achieve things. Mindset absolutely matters. Hoping doesn't work. Hard work works. And if you put your mind to something and you advance confidently in the direction of your dreams and you set out a realistic plan and are adjustable when things don't go right with that plan, you can absolutely achieve things. And as ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, I think it's important that we have an understanding that we were raised with this mindset of, you can only achieve what God will allow you to achieve. No, stop it. You can achieve the things that are within your ability and you set out to do. You can do it. Anyway, that is Wally's motivational speech of the day. Wow, we got a good rant right off the bat, so let's get going.
Our first question is, why must we be realistic about what we expect from ourselves? Of course, we love Jehovah with our whole heart, mind, and soul, and we want to do everything for His glory. However, the reality is that no matter how much we love Jehovah and want to obey Him, we are sinful descendants of Adam. As a result, we occasionally transgress in thought, word, and deed.
A lot of my friends are Christians, and I think all of us around the world can agree that this particular way of thinking is kind of harmful. And I'm not going to be droning on too long about his talk because it's not that interesting, but I did want to highlight this situation where you have him saying, you have this stress, you have this anxiety, you have these expectations, you're not able to meet them, and then going to Adam and Eve. The entire narrative there is suggesting that you can't be healthy or strong or accomplish things because you were born sinful. So because 6,000 or so years ago someone ate some fruit, that means that you can't. Now, I think all of us can agree that looking at it in such a narrow-minded way is not only archaic, but kind of harmful when we have more nuanced approaches. I mean, boy howdy, most of the Christians I talk to are like, well, yeah, there's that, but Jesus. And that's where we tend to start agreeing upon more things and some of the ethics of Jesus. And that is maybe a little bit more helpful in certain areas. But Watchtower, I find it amazing that they are always focusing on sort of this Old Testament God and ignoring so many of the teachings and principles of Jesus and the things that he espoused. They're just like, yeah, we won't worry about that. What about Adam and Eve? That's where we really, anyway, I won't digress too much here, but it's something important to remember that when we're talking to someone that has, severe anxiety and depression and is going through a difficult time and isn't able to find a life path and all of this stuff, you don't want to be telling them, well, you were born sinful, and you'll never really be able to do this. So set some realistic expectations for yourself there, Bucko Brown.
Our second question for consideration is, why must we be realistic in what we expect from our brothers and sisters? Just as it's essential to avoid having expectations that are too high for ourselves, we must also avoid expecting too much from our brothers and sisters. Such unreasonable expectations create stress, disappointment, and frustration.
Now, this is a pretty interesting thing, considering the judgmental nature of Jehovah's Witnesses. They are always, because of Watchtower's insane amount of rules and regulations that they have directing people's lives, they are always looking to get someone on some random weird nonsense, right? And when you have this, it's a culture of, you always have to be watching your back. There might be someone that's going to stab you in the back. Even your friends, you can't really trust them because they've been instructed by Watchtower to go to the elders if you ever step out of line. So when he's talking about this, hey, we don't want to be disappointed with people. We don't want to have unrealistic expectations about our brothers and sisters. It is kind of laughable to me because they have this culture, and maybe that's in the past, and maybe they're moving sort of in a different direction where they're not going to be so hard-nosed on these things. But it's funny that he's like, we need to have realistic expectations of our brothers and sisters, but make sure you report them to the elders if they ever do anything wrong ever. If they step even one little hair outside of Watchtower's rules, we want to know it.
The Awake of September 8, 1994, quoted a factory supervisor who said,
one of the most recent Watchtower articles was this, which I find hilarious, given the context that he is going to say something so stupid. An Awake from 1994. Okay, wow, what a trusted source. But it gets worse. Quoted a factory supervisor as saying, This is where they get their information and knowledge from. An Awake in 1994 quoted a factory supervisor, and they feel qualified to talk about mental health and how to help people. They feel qualified to tell people how they can deal with, going through a natural disaster, going through financial struggles, going through marital difficulties, bullying at school. And this man says, hey, an Awake in 1994 quoted a factory worker. Am I right? I mean, some great advice, right, guys? Absolutely hysterical and insane to me that anyone takes them seriously when this is their level of sources they provide for their wisdom.
Whether our hope is heavenly or to enjoy everlasting life on a paradise earth. This is a realistic expectation because our reasonable and loving God has promised it, and He does not lie.
And this is exactly what I was talking about earlier. This buffoon might as well think that there is an actual creatures on a train saying, no, I do not want green eggs and ham. I do not want them, Sam, I am. This man thinks that maybe Tinkerbell will come into his room and fart some fairy dust on his face, and then he'll fly off to Never Ever Land. What are you talking about when you're talking about, well, we know this is real because it said it in a book? You got to have more than that. You got to have something more tangible than that, or else you're just going to open your mind to all sorts of goofy nonsense. But anyway. That's easy. How's your leg?
I started to make a lot of friends at school. And aside from school, I began learning how to rollerblade. So whenever I'd go out to practice, I'd meet lots of different people.
I made some mistakes because of bad associations. We started going out at night and maybe just drinking a little alcohol, but eventually we were riggedy wrecked, son! By the time I realized what was happening, I was already really involved. I was 17 years old.
I started being close friends with them. They were everything to me, and I really trusted them. They were doing some wrong things like using bad language.
What the hell's the matter with you? When are you going to stop acting like a child?
I am a child.
Now, the real problem with this entire series is that it doesn't really focus on what the actual issues are sometimes, because if you're a Jehovah's Witness, those don't matter. If someone's, snorting cocaine and doing heroin, that doesn't really matter. You shouldn't be with them anyway because they're a worldly person, and worldly people aren't going to encourage you to do more for the Watchtower organization. They're not going to increase your spiritual health. So the person could also, that they were skating with or whoever they were hanging out with, could be encouraging them to start their own business, could be encouraging them to go to college, could be helping them get better grades in school. It could be anything that's super positive, going out and playing sports, getting good exercise. No matter what it is, that doesn't matter because the person is the problem. And it's a very bad way of training youth and children. They need to learn how to start evaluating situations and be able to look at a problem or an issue and come up with a reasonable conclusion of, is this good? Is this bad? Is this reasonable? Is this not reasonable? Is this healthy? Is it unhealthy? But with Watchtower, they don't go through any of those processes. All they say is worldly person equals bad, and that's it. So you could remove all of the other situations out of here, and it would make quite literally not a single difference. If they said, oh yeah, me and my buddies used to get together and we would wash our parents' cars and cut the grass at our grandparents' house, they would still look down on that. Now, obviously, they don't use that example because they need to portray people on the outside of the congregation, on the outside of the witnessing world, as these crazy, deranged, wild party people that just want to, I guess, have sex and do drugs and go to jail, because that's what you do when you're a worldly person. But that's simply not the case. But anyway, I find these particular videos to be very annoying.
I began to make excuses, saying that it didn't really matter and that there wasn't anything wrong with what I was doing.
My spiritual routine was just going to the meetings.
I started missing some meetings.
I never prayed. I didn't even know how to do personal study.
I wasn't reading the Bible every day.
In this group of friends, there was a boy who liked me and asked me out. And since all my friends were dating, I thought, why not? So I started dating him, and my parents had no idea. I'd lie about where I was going, what I'd be doing, and who I'd be with. I was pretty much two completely different people. At home I was one way, and with my friends I was another.
I tried to pray to Jehovah, but I just couldn't. I felt ashamed because I knew inside that Jehovah wasn't happy with what I was doing.
My conscience really bothered me.
Now, the funny thing here, other than the Adobe stock footage, is when I was a Jehovah's Witness, and myself included, everyone, all of my friends, everyone I knew, they were all secretly dating behind their parents' back as well. So what's the difference? Is there any difference between outside or inside the congregation? Not really. So again, the problem is the people and not any of those behaviors or anything. And you wouldn't have to be secretly dating behind your parents' back or anything like that if you could be honest with them, if you could be truthful, if you were living a normal, healthy life. So again, Watchtower is creating the problem where they try and put teenagers in this unnatural situation and have these unrealistic expectations for teenagers. Boy, howdy, is it hilarious that just 10 seconds ago they were talking about how we need to have realistic expectations, but all of us or any of us that have grown up as Jehovah's Witnesses know they have absolutely crazy, sky-high, unrealistic expectations for what you're going to do as a teenager. And the things they were missing out on. Oh no, I didn't even know how to do personal study. I didn't know how to comment at meetings. I started missing meetings, can you believe it? Like, oh my goodness. Teenagers should not be reading the Bible for the umpteenth time. If it's like a hobby or a study they want to get into, let them actually study the Bible, not these basic brain-dead Watchtower publications which regurgitate the same thing over and over again. It's really saddening. Anything that has to do with kids or young people, the youth, teenagers, it always depresses me, and it's a little bit triggering just because it reminds me of all of the unhealthy things I experienced growing up.
There was a moment when my boyfriend and then some of those friends really let me down. I began thinking about how I didn't have anyone else in my life.
One time, we were all drinking and this girl invited us all to go to her house. I started thinking about what might happen if I said yes to that girl's invitation. I knew that there'd be drinking, drugs, and maybe even something immoral might happen.
So after having not prayed for a really long time, I closed my eyes and said, Jehovah, please help me. I'm just so alone. I don't have anyone. I felt completely abandoned by everyone.
Are you kidding me? An organization that shuns even teenagers. The amount of stories we hear about people that are living at home, they're underage, that get kicked out of their house by their parents because they get disfellowshipped. Talk about isolation. Talk about everyone you've ever known in your entire life. You go to a meeting one day and they're all your best friends, happy, joy, love, hugs, kisses. You say one thing negative against the organization, those people will see you in a grocery store and walk the other direction. I get so annoyed that they use this example. So what is she to do? To go back to an organization that if she ever trips up, if she ever makes any mistake, if she does, I don't know, something normal or natural, thinks for herself for any reason, she'll get kicked out and shunned and have to deal with all of the trauma that she's feeling, those feelings of loneliness. She's going to have to deal with that another time. It's so completely ridiculous. And then this poor guy, we were out drinking one time and a girl said, hey, let's go back to my house, which obviously means that everyone's going to get together for drugs and sex. That's how it goes. I mean, every time I've been invited to someone's house that wasn't a Jehovah's Witness, it was immediately followed up with drugs and sex. Woo-hoo-wee! Just been a wild ride out here being a worldly person. Like, the people that are writing this, I don't think have spent a lot of time outside of Bethel or outside of the organization in general. And if it is their experience that every party you go to or every time someone says, hey, why don't we go back to my house, that it's followed up with drugs and sex, maybe you just had really weird, crazy friends that were just going a little hardcore. Not everyone is like that. Anyway, let's move on from this segment and see what else we got in this bad boy. Well, I'm happy to see that the anime music videos are back, and I gotta say, this one is an absolute banger. So let's see how this person that used to be a Jehovah's Witness, or no doubt grew up and was baptized in it, but has fallen away from the faith and has gotten into a life of debauchery. Let's see how he moves his way and navigates his life so it's more in line with biblical principles and Watchtower teachings.
And now this time it's you, but there's something you can do. Learn from the experience.
Oh, obviously I can't play the entire thing because of YouTube, but anyway, they try and look for these things that he's doing bad or very negative in his life, and that's playing video games and being lonely and going to concerts. Well, the being lonely part is a direct result of him being a Jehovah's Witness and being abandoned by all of his friends and family. So that's absolutely Watchtower's fault. Where you stand on video games, I guess I'll leave that up to your personal discretion. But I know for me personally, I can play video games and feel pretty great. Don't really feel super negative or anything after that. So don't really know why that would evoke anything that's like, man, I'm sitting here playing Valorant. I need to go back to the Kingdom Hall. Like, I don't think that happens very often. And I actually went to more concerts and events while I was a Jehovah's Witness than after I left, because it was a way for me to get out there and do something that was fun and enjoyable that wasn't technically against the rules. You wouldn't be pulled into the back room for going to a concert necessarily. So I went to a lot of concerts. So yeah, all very confusing.
Another dawn is breaking, and your heart may be aching, but you can't go back in time. You have to see it through. Stop and think it over, and take it to Jehovah. His word is there to guide you.
What an opportunity. I know all of us collectively were hoping. We all sat there like, oh, is he going to do it? Is he going to say, think it over and think about Jehovah? But we didn't get the Jehovah. What a fantastic opportunity. Now we know that this isn't a Pimo that wrote this song, because if it was, 100% we would have seen think it over, think about Jehovah. But all jokes aside, this is so typical of what it's like if someone is outside of Watchtower, has never actually, they didn't leave for the right reasons, has never really understood some of the more harmful practices that the organization has. They don't understand maybe some of the things that are wrong with the organization. And they miss their family. They're lonely. They're kind of just out there going through the phases of life depressed because they don't have any support system, long-term friends, family members to support them. And he's looking over old pictures. Hey, I find myself in the trap of sometimes getting nostalgic and looking at old pictures too. So, I mean, we're all guilty of it. But it can be a very emotional experience looking at all the friends and family that we've lost now that we're on the outside of the organization. But again, all of this struggle that this fictitious anime character is facing is directly related to him being a Jehovah's Witness. And they designed the system to be the only solution to fix the problem is to go back to being a Jehovah's Witness. But that's the hard part, is that's not the actual answer. The actual answer is to wake up to what you've experienced as a Jehovah's Witness and slowly work through all of that trauma and eventually move on with your life. That is the actual antidote, not going back to Watchtower. Yes, if you want to come back to Jehovah, you got to do 3 things. Cut your hair, throw away your video game that says kill something or another, and delete the dating apps off your phone. That's what Jehovah wants. I mean, all of the problems and everything going on in the world, diseases, wars, humanitarian crisis, natural disasters, what he really wants is for you to cut your hair, throw away that video game, and delete your dating app. I don't make the rules here, guys, so we just got to do what we got to do. The last few acts of this broadcasting are absolutely terrible. I honestly would rather pour glue down my pants and go for a jog than have to listen to this. And I wouldn't subject you guys to that sort of cruelty. So we are going to call it a day here. So there's another proper JW broadcasting all wrapped up, spanked on the bottom, and sent to your grandfather, because the last one we sent to your grandmother. So, we got to share the love. If you're still around, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next time. It's easy. Are you going to see everyone next time? The gain on my microphone is really low. He was making cute little sounds, so he said, yes, I will see you next time.